Yeah, how about the Bucks coming into the Viv last night for the first time in about 20 years and beating the Utah Jazz at home last night? And I think it was one of those games where you had a lot of positive takeaways, but you lost the game anyways. Jake, was it a moral win for the Utah Jazz?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm even ready to say it was a moral victory. I mean, I think that yeah, you shot well early in the game. You played it. You played one of your better games of the year. I do agree with that. So if you want to take that as a victory, that's cool. I'm fine with that. But the thing that I left this game thinking about was, when you play the better teams in the league, they just have so many ways to beat whoever they're playing, and that's the thing that really stood out to me. There are some nights where the Jazz will play teams like Dallas, as an example. Perfect example. Team right behind the Jazz now. Dallas, doesn't have, 10 different ways they can beat you. It's pretty much Luka. You've got Finney-Smith and Hardaway. Those three guys are really going to, make or break for them. They're going to decide if they win or lose games. But I look at this Bucks team, and it's no surprise that this team is one of the best teams in the league. You forget about the quality of their role player. You forget about the quality of guys like Brook Lopez. You forget about the quality of a Drew Holiday as a second-tier player on that team. And so last night you start to see that kind of come through, and you see Drew Holiday hitting the big, baseline fadeaway over Don late in the game. And
Yeah.
obviously Giannis, I mean, what do you even say about this guy? I mean, I think he continues to impress. He has an unconventional style of play, but I think that there's no fear in him. He ran at Rudy several times late in that game, and basically had his way, with all due respect to Rudy. And really, I'm not sure that there's anybody in the league that can stop Giannis when he's coming downhill. I mean, honestly, like, I don't know. Maybe Joel Embiid, maybe, just because Joel is such a big body. But other than that, I don't think that there's anyone who can stop him when he's downhill.
Well, and I will just maintain that I think this is a larger issue defensively. I mean, when you look at the way that they allowed Giannis to get a sprinting start from three-quarter court, you're right. You're not going to stop him running downhill like that. But I also think team-wise and team basketball-wise, you have to be better than that. And I think you have to know that that's how he likes to play. That's his strength. So when you are not willing to do something about that, and when you are not willing to pick him up at the very least at half court and get the ball out of his hands so he can't run downhill, bad things are going to happen.
Yeah.
But the other issue here is that you got a really stellar performance out of Mike Conley. Finally, we've all been waiting for Mike to come back to life. And yet Drew Holiday probably won Milwaukee the game last night. So you got this great performance out of Mike, but his opposite number went off. And I think this game, the real thing about this game that scares you is it knocks the Jazz out of sole possession of fourth place in the West. What this does is now you are tied in a dead heat with the Dallas Mavericks, who you have the tiebreaker over. But you're going into an incredibly difficult road trip, which, by the way, the Dallas Mavericks have already started. They're in Brooklyn tomorrow night. And now it just becomes a war of attrition because obviously you're without Bojan Bogdanovic last night. You lose, Daniel House early in this game, and you're playing from behind.
Yeah.
And even through all of that adversity, you had an 11-point lead in the third quarter in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And you were within a possession late in the fourth, and your best player on this team, Donovan Mitchell, had another fourth quarter where he just couldn't hit a jumper.
Yeah.
And you're starting to wonder if this is just how this season's going to go. And I don't know what this team can do to get all 7 of their top players on the floor healthy in a rotation that's going to allow them to win games, because we haven't seen that very often this year at all.
Yeah, well, yeah, and honestly, I think we can all agree we haven't seen it in the last 2 seasons. I mean, I think when it mattered most last year, injuries plagued this team, and I think that that's a whole kind of conversation on its own. But I think staying on last night, I look at this game and yeah, no Bogey. A lot of people are going to say, well, what if Bogey had 30? Well, I got news for you. I don't think he's putting up 30 against the Bucks. That's just my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I don't see him matching up with a Holiday or whoever they would have decided to put on him. I don't think that Bogey would have gone off for 30. I think that's probably a 17 to 23 point performance for Bogey. and the game is still close. My bigger issue is late game execution with Donovan Mitchell and the rest of the team. I think it's no secret that Don had a rough fourth quarter last night, but I don't think that this team had a great fourth quarter collectively. I don't think
At
they
all,
were
yeah.
executing offensively. And more importantly, I don't think you were executing defensively because, as you so pointed out, you had a huge lead headed to the fourth. And I just think that this team has a habit of I think it's like 10 games now or whatever, where they've had a double-digit lead and end up losing the game. And a lot of that is on the road. And so that's what I was most surprised about. You did that at home. You know, you got to be better than that. That's how it has to be.
Yeah, but the other thing is here, I don't think you have a whole bunch of adjustments you're going to make. I mean, I think this roster is what it is. I think it was nice to see Eric Paschall, even though I don't think he played particularly well. He gave you a little bit more pace. I'm a big believer that this Jazz team needs to play fast basketball. And too many times they're a walk-it-up team. And I think they wind up taking a lot of bad shots because they are a walk-it-up team.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a real struggle for this ball club. And I think the other thing that really plagues this team is the inability to get big shots from multiple people. It seems like every night you're going to have a Jordan Clarkson go for 46 or whatever it was the other night. He scores 8 points last night.
Yeah.
You have Don go to sleep in the fourth quarter last night. Mike Conley has a big game, but you're not getting this collective big movement forward. And I think the other thing that you have to start looking at is, how do you get Rudy Gobert more involved in the offense on a regular basis? Because when you're going to him with the lob game, it's working very well. But I think the other thing we saw last night was that guys like Brook Lopez and Giannis Antetokounmpo don't care about Rudy Gobert's stack of Defensive Player of the Year award trophies.
Yeah.
I mean, Brook Lopez was back for the first time since I think October last night, and he went right at Rudy and blocked a shot, and like they banged down low. And you look at Giannis, as you mentioned in the fourth quarter, running right into Rudy's chest multiple times.
Yeah.
And Rudy did have a couple of block shots in there, but Giannis Antetokounmpo won that battle on a regular basis last night.
Well, and I think the problem for this team is that when guys of Giannis's ability, you know, the KDs, the Stephs, the
you mean the guys you run into in the playoffs?
Yeah, you know, the guys you run into in the playoffs, when they're going off and they're doing what those guys do, you know, if you're not shooting 40, 43% from three, they're going to run away from you. They're going to outlast you. And that's the thing. The big umbrella takeaway from this game to me last night, what stood out the most was, hey, the problem isn't that Giannis is going off. Giannis is going to go off whether you want him to or not. He's going to get his every single night, and there's nothing you're going to do about it. And that's fine. That's not why you're losing the game. But the point is that when you have an 11-point lead headed into the fourth, and then you absolutely tank in the fourth offensively and combine that with Giannis doing what he was going to do anyway, that's why you're losing these games, you know? And that's very different than what happened in OKC or what happened against the Pelicans or what happened against the Kings. You know, that's very different, you know? And this team, unfortunately, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's almost as if we have to talk about them like figuring out how to close games throughout the fourth quarter, not even just like the last 5 minutes. Like they got to keep that third quarter energy and level of play flowing into the fourth. And that's what's kind of crazy because this is a veteran team. This is a team that's been to the playoffs multiple times. This is a team that knows what it takes to win a game. And yet here we are, and I still see the lack of organization on the floor. And that is particularly surprising when you have Mike Conley on this team, because Mike Conley, what's his value? Why did you bring him back? Well, you brought him back for leadership, number one. Number two, the mid-range and floater game. And number three, the three-point shot, which was on full display last night. Yet we're still disorganized in the fourth quarter. Don's still turning it over in the fourth quarter. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think that this was one of those losses where you're like, oh, this was an embarrassing loss and this team should be ashamed of itself. But I do think this was one of those losses where it was like, man, dude, like you lost by like 6 or whatever it was, like basically 2 possessions. I mean, what happens if you just execute here or there? You know, you're down by 1 possession.
Well, you can't shoot 6 of 14.
Yeah.
From in the fourth quarter. I mean, it just you have to get out. And the problem is 4 or 5 of your 6 shots that were made we're in the paint. You know, like 2 of those are Rudy Gobert dunks. One of them's the Pascal dunk. You know, really the only shot from the perimeter was Mike Conley's 3-ball. And that was it. And I don't know. I guess my point is that this team, as we talked about, they rely far too much on the 3-ball. Last night you came out in the first quarter just on fire from 3. I mean, you had, what is that, 3, 6, 9, 10 3-pointers in the first quarter.
Yeah, they set a franchise record for threes in one quarter as a team with 10 threes. And for the game, you shot 35%, which again, that's not a bad number. And this is kind of what I'm trying to get at. It's not like you played bad in this game. You just didn't play your best game. And the good teams in the league make you pay for that.
But when you make 10 threes in the first quarter and then 7 the rest of the entire game,
yeah,
you're probably going to lose.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think the Milwaukee Bucks are an elite basketball team, and I think the Jazz are not. Nothing that I've seen this season has changed my opinion. The Jazz are a very good, not great team.
Yeah.
And I think you're starting to see that when you play with an older roster and you rely on guys, with all due respect to Daniel House, when you're relying on Daniel House to play big minutes, you're going to get let down. There's a reason that House has bounced around this league. And I agree that he brings you a really important shot maker from 3. He is a guy that can knock down the corner 3 with regularity. And his defense is good, but that's in small stretches, because when you play Daniel House a lot of minutes and you start spreading out his performance, it's pretty mediocre.
Yeah.
His best ability for this club is his defense, and then he goes out early in this game and you don't have that defense. And so my point is, I just think this is what this team is and has been, and until they blow this roster up, will be.
Yeah.
They're a good, not a great team. And I just think you have to embrace it. That's where this team is.
Yeah.
And again, yesterday, all this garbage about Donovan Mitchell trying to force a trade, and it's the exact same story that we reported 6 weeks ago. It has not changed.
Yeah.
Donovan Mitchell is not the problem with this basketball team. And as many people want to say that Don's the problem and he's trash and he's selfish, and if Donovan Mitchell doesn't drive and kick, this team doesn't score.
Well, and I think that the drive and kick is some of their best offense. Again,
it is.
Why do you think you made 10 threes in the fourth quarter? Well, Donovan was driving and kicking.
First quarter,
I mean. Yeah, why do you think you made all those threes in the first quarter? Because, he was driving and kicking.
29 points, 8 dimes, 6 boards. You know, like he only had 4 turnovers. He had 13 turnovers. He had 4 of them.
But do you see what I mean? Like, I know I keep pointing this out, but it's so fascinating to me about this team. That's like a good stat sheet for an NBA player of his ability. Like 29-8 is a damn good game against the Milwaukee Bucks. That's my point. Like, it's not like you had some atrocious game, but what I'm getting at here is when you're in the playoffs and you're playing, Dallas, let's say, and then let's say you win that series and you go on to play Phoenix or Golden State or who the hell ever, whoever that next team is, you're only going to run into more penalties for turning it over and not playing well and taking the bad 3 and bitching at the officials. So the issues that plague this team are just going to get exacerbated the farther they go into the season, and that's kind of tough to swallow, to be honest with you.
Well, and I think the other thing that you have to talk about here is Hassan Whiteside. I mean, again, this is a guy that when he's on, he's such an important piece of this team. But the issue is last night, Quinn takes him out of the game because he's playing lackluster basketball.
Yeah.
And then he walks off really slowly and he's hanging his head. And you have to, he goes and plops himself down on the bench. And then what happens? You wind up, with Alex Jensen, I think it was, going over and having to console him and talk to him. And it's like, okay, now we've lifted his spirit. He comes in, he gives you a good couple of minutes. And, he does what he always does. He blocks a shot here and there and then trots down the floor. You take him out, you bring Rudy in, and he isn't a contributor to the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Like, Hassan Whiteside has got to stop being more of a problem than he is a solution. And because when he is on and he is plugged in and he's energetic and he's running the floor, Hassan Whiteside's a very good number 2 center. But as the season's gone on, that's been diminishing.
Yeah.
More and more.
Well, listen, I mean, what better example of a poor attitude than Doris Burke talking about it on the national broadcast? I mean, when you're getting national attention about your attitude and and I guess the inconsistency in that, you know you have a bit of a problem, and I think that is really unfortunate because Hassan's a talented dude. Like, let's not make any mistake about this. The guy can play, but he has to be right mentally, and it's just, I was kind of watching this game like contrasting, like, okay, you've got Hassan Whiteside, and then you've got, like, I guess Hassan for the Bucks would be like a Bobby Portis, if you will, in that same sort of a role almost, and Bobby Portis is the polar opposite. He's a guy that comes into the game and is just hair on fire, super high energy, even like he's almost try-hard guy. He's the guy that's going to shoot a bunch of bricks, and then he's going to get all fired up. But last night he was on. He made a couple of threes. So I don't know, man. This team and this roster and in the way they go about playing the game, I understand why Jazz fans get frustrated. It's like, hey, we're good enough to get to the postseason. We just can't get over the bump or get over the hill. And I get it, man. It's frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I don't know how you fix that because, I mean, your best defensive player is Rudy Gobert, and Rudy's a -2, a -3 last night again.
I
Rudy's
think,
in the minus. Is that Rudy's fault? Probably not. I
Yeah.
mean, like giving up those baskets to Giannis, it obviously Giannis scored that basket going one-on-one with Rudy.
Yeah.
But he's sprinting from 3/4 court down the middle of the paint. That's not Rudy Gobert's fault. And so you're asking Rudy again, and I will just continue to say this. You're asking Rudy Gobert to do things that no single player can do, which is stop an entire team's offense. When you have Giannis running down the floor, or when you have Rudy being switched out and you're asking him to go with Drew Holiday to the corner last night, and Holiday hits a 3 over him. When you're pulling him away from the basket and you're asking him to guard Brook Lopez on the perimeter and then have responsibility to protect the rim at the same time. You're asking him to do things that nobody can do. That's not Rudy's fault, right? You're asking Donovan Mitchell to carry this offense in the fourth quarter. And I don't know, is Don clutch? I happen to think the world of Donovan Mitchell. I happen to think he's a superstar. I happen to think that he's the exact kind of player you want, right? But there's so many Jazz fans who just want to trash Don, and I haven't read the comments this morning. Utah Jazz fan in India, your comment was first, and it got filtered. Sorry. Funky Orient says, pain to see how the Jazz can't make a shot in the last minutes of the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Well, you live by the 3, you die by the 3. Rudy Sanchez says, when will the Jazz learn to be mentally tough to keep the lead in the fourth quarter? This is torture, and it's getting old. The Nye guy says the Jazz have an inability to keep leads no matter who we play. Is that coaching? No, I think that's on the players.
Yeah.
I think, like one of the things that was very clear last night, there were moments in this game where the 11-point lead was slipping away and Jordan Clarkson is sprinting down the floor. And where are you going? That's not your game. That's not who you've ever been. And what happens? He got in the paint and he got shut off, right? Like when you're in crunch time and your lead is slipping away, you need to execute your offense. And too many times the offense for this team, when it's clutch or when it's tight or when you're struggling, is give Donovan Mitchell the ball and get out of the way. And that's not offense, right? So what have we seen Donovan Mitchell do? We've seen Donovan Mitchell drive and kick to the corner. The drive and kick for a corner 3 is a staple in the NBA today.
Yeah.
And the Jazz make it at a high level. But this is, again, where I say, where's Bojan Bogdanović last night? Well, he's hurt. Where is Daniel House, who's one of your better corner 3 shooters? He's hurt.
Yeah.
So the guys you're counting on now, and this is not to be an indictment on Royce O'Neal again. Where's Royce O'Neal last night in the first quarter? Oh, he's knocking down threes. Buckets O'Neal. Where's he when you need him in the third and fourth quarter?
Yeah.
Nowhere to be found.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple times, and it was going around Twitter where he had hesitated and not taken a shot he should have taken.
Passing up open threes again.
Yeah.
Because that's not on Quinn Snyder. Quinn Snyder's job is to get Royce O'Neal an open three in the corner. It's not his job to make Royce shoot that and make that. And he has been taking that away from Royce and giving it to Daniel House, but House was hurt last night.
Yeah.
So you can point to a lot of different things with the Jazz, but when you look critically at why things are happening on the floor, I don't think that you can just keep pointing at Quinn and saying he sucks, he should be fired.
Yeah.
Because that's Quinn Snyder, again, I will just say, is an elite head coach in this league. He is handicapped by a roster. His front office is handicapped by the failings of previous regimes.
Yeah.
A year from now, that excuse is gone. Because over the summer, they're going to blow this roster up. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's now the question of how far can this team run in the postseason? And if you really want the truth, the best thing that could happen to this team is they go out in the first round.
Yeah.
Because if you somehow, some way figure out a way to get to the Western Conference Finals, are you going to blow this roster up? I mean, I would. I'd have blown it up after last season.
Yeah.
But you know what's going to happen. If this team somehow wins 2-3 playoff series, well, now all of a sudden, oh, this is exactly who we thought they were. That's why we kept them together.
Right.
And you're going to get another year running back the same old mediocre roster. Now, having said that, I'm telling you that ain't happening. This team is, if you fall to the 6th spot in the West, and I'm telling you that's a possibility.
Yeah, it is.
You better be looking behind you, because now, and again, not to be redundant, they're tied with the Dallas Mavericks in the 4-5 spot in the West now. The Mavericks have caught you. But if you look at where Denver is, Denver's only a game and a half behind you, and they just went to Philly and won a big game.
Yeah.
So they're all
playing good basketball.
Yeah, and they're all going through that gauntlet. And I got news for you. With Jamal Murray coming back, and you look at the way that they're getting production out of the guards who have filled in for Murray over the last year. Now those guys become backup players that are starters quality. And so it only makes you better. And you have Aaron Gordon rocking an amazing throw now and playing really good defense and blocking Joel Embiid at the rim last night.
I'm Shiva, the god of death.
You know, like I look at the way, did anybody see Karl Anthony Towns last night?
Bro.
And here we are now into the portion of the program where I tell you two things. I'm always right and I'm hung like a steer because I probably took that a step too far.
You? What?
Well, because I think everybody knows I'm hung like a steer, but nobody wants to hear me say I'm right all the time.
Yeah.
So I probably took it, or maybe that was backward. Anyway, the point is Minnesota's playing really good, basketball, and Karl Anthony Towns had a 60-piece nugget. He put 60 up last night. And you just look at the teams that is it inconceivable on this trip that the Jazz lose 4 or 5?
No, it's not.
And all of a sudden they're in the 6th spot. Or all of a sudden Minnesota, because I look at Minnesota's schedule, and Minnesota is red hot, 8-2 in their last 10. Right? And you start looking at their schedule, well, who do they have tomorrow? Oh man, they got that juggernaut of the LA Lakers. Right? And you start looking at the schedule for the T-Wolves, and you're like, uh-oh, it's home for LA. Home Saturday, they host Milwaukee. That's a tough one.
Yep.
Monday, they're at Dallas.
Big game.
Big game. Huge game, right? Phoenix, Dallas, at Boston, at Toronto, at Denver, at Houston. Washington, San Antonio, Chicago, who's reeling. So I look at this schedule. I see a lot of wins for the Timberwolves on that schedule. And frankly, for the Utah Jazz, I don't see a lot of wins left on this schedule. We talked about, like 19-5 being the end of the, being the max.
Top of the mountain.
I'd love to see them win 4 more games. And I know that's going to sound like I'm just being an ass or whatever.
You just hate the Jazz.
But ask yourself this question, casuals.
You're a casual.
Ask yourself this question. Of these remaining games right now today, here we are on Tuesday, March 15th. I wish it was Thursday. I'll be snowboarding tomorrow. How many of these games can you win? You are Wednesday home for the Chicago Bulls.
Win.
You are Friday home for the LA Clippers.
That's going to be tight, dude.
Let's give them those 2.
Yeah, okay, we'll call that a win too.
At the Knicks,
That's a win.
3. At Brooklyn,
I think that's a
it's a
loss.
loss. At Boston,
That's a loss.
at Charlotte,
That's a tight game.
that's
I
a
would
loss.
think they win. What, you
Yeah.
think they lose to Charlotte?
At Charlotte, did you guys see LaMelo last night?
What are the days? Are there back?
Oh, it's every other day. It's every other day.
Okay.
They're back-to-back Sunday, Monday, Knicks, Brooklyn,
Yeah,
which is they're
definitely
going to
gonna
lose
in
the Brooklyn game.
Yeah, they're going to lose.
Right, and then it's Monday at Brooklyn, Wednesday at Boston, Friday at Charlotte, Sunday at Dallas, Tuesday. They're 2 days off right there. Sunday, Tuesday. At LA, Thursday at another day in between. So 1 day, right? You're playing every other day until you get down to the Saturday, Tuesday game, which is at Golden State. Then you're off Sunday, Monday, Tuesday at home for Memphis, right? So I'm telling you, their wins are the Bulls, the Clippers. I think they beat or come close to beating the Knicks. They're going to lose Brooklyn, Boston, Charlotte, Dallas. I think they're probably, that Tuesday, March 29th at the Clippers. That becomes a huge day. They're going to beat the Lakers. That's 4. They'll lose at Golden State. They'll lose to Memphis. They'll beat OKC.
I don't know that we can say that.
They'll lose to Phoenix, and they will beat Portland. I think there's 6 wins on this schedule left. 6. And what is that? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 games. So I think their highest top of the mountain is 500, 7-7.
Yeah. That's rough, man.
And by the way, it should be said, Dallas has pretty much the exact same schedule.
Yeah, so we'll see.
I mean, if you look at Dallas,
Yep.
and you look at what's left on their schedule, at Brooklyn, at Philly, at Charlotte. So they're in the road trip that the Jazz are about to take.
Yes.
They come home for Minnesota and Houston. Then they go to Minnesota, back here to Utah. Utah goes back to Dallas, home for the Lakers, at Cleveland, Washington, Milwaukee, Detroit, and then they finish up with home Portland and San Antonio. So neither one of them has an easy schedule. But I'm telling you, the way that the Mavericks schedule sets up, they're going to win the 4th spot.
Yeah, and I think the concern about the Nuggets, catching the Jazz is real as well. I mean, again, I can't stress enough how clutch of a win that is in Philly. I mean, that's impressive, dude. That is a big time basketball game. So, either way, no matter what happens this season to wrap this up, like I think that the Jazz are a team that is fun to watch when everything's going great, but it's just so rare that everything works out for them based on how the schedule or how the roster is built that, it's kind of torturing for Jazz fans.
Denver's got a schedule, though. They have a schedule. They have a much easier route. I mean, at Washington, at Cleveland, home for Boston. Not at Boston, home for Boston.
Yeah.
Home for the Clippers, home for Phoenix, home for OKC. And then their last road trip is 3 of 4 on the road. Charlotte, Indiana away, Minnesota at home, Lakers away.
Yeah.
They finish at home with San Antonio, Memphis, and the Lakers.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a much
wins there.
easier schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably 10 wins. Looking at that schedule, and then Jamal Murray's going to be back in that window as well. Now, it's going to take him a while to get back. I think we're seeing Klay Thompson 6 weeks in is just now becoming a semblance of what you think he'll be going into the playoffs. It's going to take them time. But again, I think Denver's getting really good play. And the point is, there's a real good chance that the Utah Jazz are going to fall far in the standings, and it's terrifying.
Yeah.
It is terrifying. Dante May says, I think the run where Udoka started over Whiteside was the best version of Hassan this season. Yeah, when Rudy was out with that calf, I think is what you're talking about. And I think that was a little motivating, but I don't know how to get Hassan Whiteside up for every game, because when he's playing at his highest best, he's a really, really good defensive player.
Yeah.
And he's got a nice little jumper. He likes to dunk on people. Like, he's a guy that is on the cusp of a starter in this league.
Yes.
He's not a starter, but Hassan Whiteside at his highest best is on the cusp of a starting center in this league.
Yeah.
But you so rarely get that. You so rarely get that. And again, when you're having to constantly put floaters on a guy to keep him up and level, you just, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. Brandon Whiteside says, Whiteside was great last night. What were you watching? He had a stretch last night. And I don't know what his numbers look like. He had a stretch last night where he played really well. He played really well. And he's blocking a shot and he's getting you a rebound and he's dunking like that. It's the problem is you don't remember that because then he hangs his head and loses Giannis.
Yep.
And Giannis dunks on him 2-3 times. And he hangs his head and then Quinn takes him out and he hangs his head. And, you know, like it just, you can't. The thing that I think a lot of fans like to do is you like to watch games and remember moments. And you're not going to remember a guy's great moment when he struggles a lot. Last night, Hassan Whiteside played 16 minutes, was 1 of 2, gave you 5 rebounds, and blocked 4 shots.
So what game were we watching?
What game were we watching? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like when you block 4 shots, I mean, he played good. Hassan Whiteside's not here to score. Hassan Whiteside's here to give you tough defense.
Yeah.
And I think when you play 16 minutes and you have 5 rebounds and 4 blocks, I'm going to ask you, what game were you watching? Because he had moments in that game.
Mm-hmm.
It was that simple. Brandon also said Whiteside was killing Giannis.
No, he was not.
He was not killing Giannis.
Dude, get the hell out of here with that. I mean,
he said Whiteside was killing Giannis, then Quinn sat him for Rudy. Luckily, the Bucks decided not to guard him in the 4th. That was a Quinn mistake.
Dude, you're
not to guard who?
Listen. I really appreciate that you watch and you comment, but that's just not an accurate take. Nobody kills Giannis. Giannis does the killing.
No.
Like, hear me clearly that nobody is going to go out there and dominate Giannis. Was Hassan being physical with Giannis? Sure. But Giannis is a physical basketball player. He welcomes that physicality. And notice when you're notice when Rudy's in the game, Giannis is initiating contact. He's initiating the physical play. I mean, there was a run there. I think it was in the 3rd. I can't remember. Might have been in the 2nd where the game got a little chippy. You know, the physicality level went up, and I think that is a welcome sighting for this Jazz team. But to sit here and say that Hassan was somehow dominating Giannis, I mean, that's just that just tells me you're not aware. So. There you go. Aaron Rodgers agrees to a 3-year, $150 million deal with the Packers. Great. Get up.
They're paying Aaron Rodgers $50 million a year?
Apparently. Yeah. Yep.
I give up. Anyway. $50 million a year for Aaron Rodgers. Are you insane? $50 million. Anyway. The Nye guy, or Jordan McDonald says, love Don, but he has a Westbrook-like tendencies in the 4th. He needs to stop trying to do so much. I don't disagree with that. The Nye guy says, Jordan, I agree. I think he was gassed trying to do it all. I still don't like him running point in the 4th. Well, and you're having such a good game from Mike Conley. How nice was that? If you're looking for a silver lining, how nice is it that Mike Conley is hitting threes last night? He actually had teardrops and floaters in the paint. Like, that's one of the best games of the year for Mike Conley last night.
Yeah.
And I was thrilled for the guy. I mean, so many people are like, oh, he's not able. It's not that he's not able. It's more difficult for him to do what he's doing. And he's busting his ass trying to get back to who he was.
Yeah.
And to see the ball going in. And I thought the funny thing is, and I think Holly Rowe even talked about this, the first 3 went in, and it's like Mike was like, well, it's about time.
Yeah.
Like, finally.
I'm for real.
Like those of us that have played a lot of basketball, when the ball's not going in, and for Mike, it's been rattling out, and everything's coming up short, and it's really incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
So when that one goes in and you snap it, it feels really good.
Yep.
And it leads to more positivity. So I was actually happy for him. Mitchell has really struggled in the clutch, and it seems he's gotten worse every year of his career. I don't make too much of it. I don't know that he's gotten worse every year of his career. Jordan says, I'd prefer House over Royce in the clutch. Everybody would.
Yes.
Nye Guy says, I don't hate Snyder, but I just don't think his system works with the players we have. I think that they've held on to these guys far too long.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem in today's NBA. If you want to shoot 40, 45 threes a game, okay, cool. I'm fine with that. You better have a mid-range game. And this team does not have an elite mid-range performer.
Yeah.
You just don't. And I think that's why you can make 10 threes in the first quarter. And we saw this in the Clippers series last year, where I think they made 16 threes in the first half or something.
Yeah.
And then made like 2 the rest of that game.
And the Clippers come and run you down and win the game.
And the series essentially came to an end.
Yeah.
I just think that you live in, as you love to say, you live and die by the 3 on this ball club. And I think that gets you in trouble.
Yes.
Because you don't have another option. There's not like a plan B.
You don't have a go-to. You don't have, again, with all due respect to Donovan Mitchell, he's not a go-to guy that's going to go out and carry you for 5 minutes down the stretch. I mean, that's just not... I love the guy, but he's not on that level yet. I mean, literally, you watch the KDs and the Joels and, even LeBron at times still in his career where you can just give them the ball and they're going to score whether the defense likes it or not. And that's just not who Don is at this point.
Jazoint Man 1 says, good morning, casuals. Good morning.
Jazoint Man 1.
Yeah, casual.
Jeremy Bolton says, morning, dudes. How was not talking about Caruso's impressive stat line last night? Dude,
too fucking bad, man.
You know what? I was actually being a cock over the weekend. Now, I know that's surprising to some. It's not surprising to Jeremy Bolton because I was having fun with you, man. I was tweeting highlights of Alex Caruso at Jeremy. Jeremy, you're in my head, man.
All gas.
You're in my head.
No break.
You know what I'm saying?
No, rent-free in Paul George's head.
Leonard Donan Endelove. Oh, you. Oh, hey, LD. Says, Giannis. He also says the Jazz lost this game. Don had a chance to make 3, but he choked, unfortunately. Morning, guys. Love the show. Same to you, sir. We love you.
Keep it real.
Exactly. Funky Orient says, you got that right. Donovan is not a go-to guy yet for the closing minutes. I think he is. I think, now, hear me out. Look, I know he's no Kevin Durant.
He's not.
Jag off. Anyway.
He's not Devin Booker.
Keep my man's name out your mouth.
Daddy.
Take it easy. I think the issue is that this mix of players is toxic in clutch minutes because there's no identity on the Jazz.
Listen,
and he is, in my opinion, working really hard to evolve as a player. And I think what you're seeing is that Donovan is fighting his habits. And the new Donovan is the drive and kick Donovan in critical moments. I also think he doesn't trust his teammates. I think that's a huge problem because the guys he routinely gives the ball to are not there. I think he likes playing with Daniel House. I think he likes playing with Bojan Bogdanovic. And you know how I know that and think that? Because he passes them the ball routinely. He does not throw the ball in the clutch to Rudy Gobert. To your point, nice little alley-oop to Rudy last night.
Yeah, first one I've seen in a long, long time. But
he doesn't, are you really at this point, who wants to throw the ball to Buckets O'Neal?
Buckets O'Bench, you mean?
I mean, I don't want to give the ball to Royce O'Neal. Do you?
Here's what I'm saying. Here's what I'm saying. All of that is absolutely true. 100%. I agree with it. But there's no getting away from the fact that Donovan Mitchell is a great one-on-one player, but we never see it. We never see hey, we're down. Like last night would have been a perfect time. There's a minute left in the game. We're down by 6, I think it was, or 5, Go ahead, come get the pick from Rudy, get the switch, and let Don operate. Let him do what he does.
But why does this team fight that? And that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Why is it that, and maybe this is just good teams are better at basketball than mediocre teams are. Maybe it's as simple as that. But why is it that when Karl Anthony Towns is going for 60, he can get the ball? Why is it that when KD, even though KD struggled the entire game, let's say, they still give him the ball and he still knocks a shot down?
Yeah.
Why is it that the good teams go to their best player when they need him, and this team wants to, finagle around or mess around. Like, I'm sorry, but I'd rather put Donovan Mitchell in a one-on-one matchup that favors him and lose the game than have him take some wild contested three from the hash.
Because this team does not run offense
True.
in tight situations.
True.
They play ISO basketball. And that's who they are. But listen, I'm telling you, I will say it until I am dead. Donovan Mitchell is a stud. And he will come back a year from now. He will be an elite mid-range player. He will. Every offseason, he's come back with a new trick in the bag. This year, he's extended his three-point range. This year, he's worked on keeping his legs fresh. This summer, he needs to work on a mid-range game.
Yeah.
He needs to be in Brickley's gym every day working on a mid-range game because that's the one thing that he does not have in his arsenal is a consistent go-to Chris Paul, Devin Booker mid-range jumper. Every superstar in this league, I'm looking at LeBron competing for a scoring title at 37 years old. And it's because he knows the 5 spots on the floor where he can go when do you ever notice where LeBron shoots his threes from when he really needs one? He shoots it from the elbow extended. He doesn't go into the corner. He doesn't stand at the top of the key. He's offset left. That's where he shoots his best three from. And you look at the fact that he plays with his back to the basket in the exact same spot. You know, he is midway up the paint, and he's going to roll, and he's going to shoot a fadeaway.
Don't you know who I am?
If you're Devin Booker, you want to come off from if you're looking at your basket, you want to come off left, off of a little hook screen. You want to get the ball and either shoot a three off the drop or drive to the far corner of the top of the key and shoot a fadeaway jumper.
Wet like on book.
His 3-point shot from the side is his most lethal knockdown 3-point shot.
Yeah.
Where do you see Book hitting all his big threes? He's not standing at the top of the key. He's standing on the side. Answer me this. Where is Donovan Mitchell's go-to shot?
Yeah, I don't know that he has one yet.
He doesn't have one. What's his mid-range game? It's a Euro sidestep in the paint.
Yeah.
That's his mid-range game.
So I said, yeah.
So Don's got to grow, and he will, because this guy is a killer. I'm telling you. Stick with Donovan Mitchell. That's the guy who's going to take you where you want to go. With all due respect to every other guy on this roster is just an average offensive player. Tell me who the other special offensive player on this roster is.
Come on, let's go, Schleprock.
Who is it? There's not one. There isn't. Boyan Bogdanovic is not special. Rudy certainly is not special offensively. Conley.
Jordan Clarkson.
Is not special offensively. Jordan Clarkson has to be perfect, and then he's lethal. But how many times are we going to sit here and say, well, he scored whatever that was, 46 points the other night, and last night he had 8 against the Bucks. Okay, the best team you've seen in a month.
Yeah.
You scored 8 points.
Yeah.
And thanks for coming.
Yeah.
That's what this team is. He's your best player. By the way, no D, Donovan Mitchell. Playing really good defense the last month. Like, has really stepped up his defensive game. I'm begging you to stop bailing on Donovan Mitchell because this cat is a killer. He is special. He will be there. His arc is no different than Devin Booker. His arc is no different than all these other superstars.
I'm for real.
Of his generation, I mean, there are only a few guys I would take ahead of him. Certainly Jason Tatum at this point has surpassed everybody. I think Jason Tatum, he's another guy that needs a more regular mid-range game. He is becoming reliant on the dunk and three. But Jason Tatum.
Over Don.
Over
who else?
Well, I mean, there's really only 3 guys you're talking about here. It's Tatum, Booker, and Don. I mean, if you look at who else are we even having the conversation with here? I mean, Clay and Steph are older. They're not in this conversation. If you look at these guys who are, 5-6 year guys.
Yeah, Ja Morant's younger than those guys.
And Ja's a point guard. Is on the ball, different player. Different player.
Yeah, but I think Don is on the ball a ton.
By necessity.
Like I would argue that Don doesn't play the same position that Tatum and Book do, but the difference is that he plays the same role on his team that those guys do. So the dynamic is a little bit different,
Donovan Mitchell's not a point guard. And I only point to the Jazz dysfunction to make a point.
Yeah.
Mike Conley, you brought him back paying the luxury tax.
Yeah.
Mike Conley's not a 2 guard. Mike Conley's a point guard.
Facts.
You drafted Jared Butler, who's not a 2 guard. He's a point guard. Donovan Mitchell is a 2-3.
Yep.
That's what he is. You're asking him to be a point guard because you don't have anybody else because you refuse to develop Jared Butler.
Facts.
And again, I feel like now I am the guy carrying the water for Donovan Mitchell somehow, but you're asking him to do things that he shouldn't be doing, which is bring the ball up. Did we not learn from the bubble? What happened in the bubble against Denver?
Yeah.
Well, Don brought the ball up, and what did they do? What did the Clippers do last year? Double. Immediately. What are teams doing to Kevin Durant when Kyrie Irving's not able to play?
Doubling.
Getting the ball out of his hands.
Now, what I will say, though, and this is to all the people who are like, well, Quinn this and Quinn that, I think one thing that should be said, we talked about what coaches I'd rather have over Quinn Snyder, specifically over the weekend when the Nets played the Knicks were double-teaming aggressively for long stretches of that game. And, and this is unfortunate for Don, but Kevin Durant has the ability to dribble out of that and just shoot over you because he's so damn tall. And that's the thing that I think, I know 99% of the players in the league can't do what Kevin Durant can do. So if you're Donovan Mitchell, yeah, I think it's absolutely vital that you have guys around you that you trust. And I understand that he doesn't trust his teammates. But again, I can't say this enough. Like, I want to see Don, like, kind of take the next step mentally. Like, you got to be able to, as the best player on your team, decide between and identify the moments when you need to be the best player and you need to be the shot taker and you need to control the pace of the game versus when you need to be driving kicked on. I need him to get better at that.
Yeah. But I watching that Philly game, you and I watched the Philly game last night.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I'm looking at Joel Embiid, I'm looking at James Harden, but I'm more looking at, Thibault and Maxey. And I'm looking at a team that's got Tobias Harris knocking down big threes.
Well, like Embiid is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. You notice how, and obviously Embiid and Jokic are battling for the MVP, of course. So, that's fueling Embiid. But you notice how there are stretches in the game where Embiid is on the floor, running up and down, but he's essentially taking a possession off here, possession off there, and letting Maxey and Harden and Tobias Harris and all these guys kind of operate and do their thing. And again, I just point that out to say Don doesn't have that luxury either. Don can't take possessions off. And so that's why I say, again, not to be repetitive, but that's why this roster ultimately needs work. The dynamic of these players together just isn't what it needs to be.
And look at teams like Houston. Look at Houston, dude. 2 years from now, Houston's going to be a real contender.
Dude, their dynamic is better than the Jazz dynamic. Not to say they're a better team.
No.
Right? On paper, because they're not. They're a bad team. But the dynamic and how the players work together works better than what the Jazz have. The problem is that the Rockets are so damn young, they turn it over and take terrible shots. So that's why they're a bad team. Yeah. But again, imagine a situation or a world where Don has, let's say Jalen Green to his right instead of Bojan Bogdanović.
Just imagine replacing Royce O'Neal with Tyrese Maxey.
Yeah. I mean, what would that do for Donovan Mitchell? That's my point. So
come on.
Yeah, we have to get moving here. But the point is that the Jazz just they need to work on this thing.
All right, go ahead and give us a thumbs up right now. If you're here watching this video, please give us a like. Also, please give us a subscribe as we are continuing to grow this podcast, and we really appreciate that you guys support this show. And if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, bless you. You need to get into the description. All of our affiliate links for our Amazon must-haves are there as well.